Okay, welcome to our second debate in a series of assembly debates for the 5 upcoming assembly races. Today we're on District 4, Midtown Anchorage, and we're joined by incumbent Meg Zaletel and challenger Kathy Henslee. Thank you both for being here. Ballots go out in the mail on March 15th in a couple days, and the election concludes on April 5th. I wanted to first start by thanking our sponsors, IBW Local 1547, training and representing electrical and communication workers all over Alaska, Alaskans for Better Elections, working to inform people about Alaska's new voting system, and GCI, providing telecom, internet, and wireless phone services throughout Alaska. We're going to start with opening statements, debate some of the issues, let the candidates ask each other some questions, and conclude with closing statements. We drew at random, and we'll start with the first opening statement with you, Meg Zaletel. Go ahead.
Great. Thanks for having me, Jeff, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with folks. My name's Meg Zaletel, and I'm running for re-election in Anchorage Midtown District 4. I've made Midtown my home. I raised my family there. I have small business, and I really enjoy being in Midtown. A lot of times people forget a little bit about Midtown, but Midtown is truly the middle of Anchorage. In a lot of ways, I believe it's the soul of Anchorage. And I think that in representing Midtown, you have to realize that Midtown has a high expectation of its representatives. It has a history of having really responsive representation and really hardworking representation. And I believe that I've met that bar over the last 3 years. I am extremely responsive to my constituents. I show up, I work hard. And I think what's really important to reinforce is that, yes, there have been some headlines, but overall, the work every day is about responding to constituent and resident needs. Responsive, results-oriented leadership is what Midtown expects, and that's what I provide, and I hope to be reelected.
Thank you. Kathy Henslee, opening statement.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having us. This is really a great opportunity to introduce myself and to get to put my statement out there. So my name is Kathy Henslee. I'm a lifelong Alaskan and a business owner, mother and grandmother. My husband Steve and I have been married for 35 years, and he's a retired Alaska Army National Guard pilot. So we've been blessed to be able to be in Alaska for the whole time. I'm running because I've been dissatisfied with the way that Anchorage has been run in the last several years. It's been more invasive into our lives. I was really disappointed with the response from the Assembly for our small businesses. And I do live in Midtown also, and we have a lot of small businesses, and our families and small businesses were really suffering and didn't really feel like they were being responded to, which is what I hear all the time and also my experience. So I started looking into what could be done differently, and I just realized that the philosophy of the Anchorage Assembly is very opposite of how I believe we should be running things and how things can go in Anchorage. I'm business friendly. I believe in the individual and think that they make the best choices for themselves. And I think the more we get government off people's backs, the more they thrive in their personal lives and in their business lives. So I'd love it if people would consider voting for me and see if they want to change.
Okay, thanks. We're going to get into the topics now. I want to start with homelessness. We'll start with you, Meg. This issue has been kind of plaguing the city for a long time. The Sullivan Arena has been functioning now for 2 years, and there's been all kinds of, talk for decades about this issue, and it seems to be more noticeable and more of an issue. What do you think about this issue, and how do we solve this? And I want to hear about the Sullivan Arena as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so thanks for the question. I think it's top of mind, especially as we work towards the mass care closure. And the mass care is the Sullivan Arena and the hotels that were stood up during the pandemic. And I think we're on the right track with the public-private partnership with the mayor's office in philanthropy in the mass care exit facilitation. So that's a 5-plank strategy that includes substance misuse, specialized shelter, as well as the navigation center and some housing. All 5 of those planks are really getting at the issue in different ways. The solution to homelessness is housing, and we have a housing crisis in Anchorage. There's less than a 5% vacancy rate in Anchorage right now. That makes it very hard for someone experiencing homelessness to be competitive to get an apartment. So if you have the Sullivan Arena and the mass care at approximately 855 residents, and you need to find places for them to go, you're going to have to use a variety of options. And rental assistance isn't the issue right now. It is literal places to go. So soon the complex care shelter will be coming online, and this will be a place that specializes in helping those who need a little bit more than a shelter because they have a medical or a behavioral health issue. So I think that multifaceted approach with a public-private partnership is having us head in the right direction.
Yeah, Kathy, same question about homelessness. And Mayor Bronson ran in a large part on the homelessness issue, and he became mayor. And it's been 8 months, and he's at odds with the assembly, and he's the mayor, and he hasn't really been able to do much. So what do you think the answer is, and your kind of solution to this problem plaguing the city?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big issue, and we hear about it all the time, and we experience it all the time because that issue is moving into Midtown. I will say, just for some of my background and some experience that I've had, is I volunteered and then worked for a faith-based nonprofit here in Anchorage called Priceless Alaska. So I was a transitional housing director, and then I moved into the program director, and so I have hands-on, one-on-one experience with a part of this population. And it was a real honor and blessing for me to be in that position and to get to really see what is happening. So it is an issue. And that's one thing everybody agrees on, that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. The thing that we don't agree on is how to address it. I do believe that faith-based programs and nonprofit programs are a better option than another government bureaucracy. And I think one of the proofs of that is we're spending more and more and more and more money all the time on this issue, and our results have been terrible. The explosion of the population of homeless people is obvious for everybody in Anchorage. We're all dealing with it, and it's not been good for the homeless people. So there's things that we can do that will make a difference. Having them in the Sullivan Arena for 2 years, the longest running, largest emergency care shelter in the country, was never a good solution. It's not the right thing for the residents of Anchorage. It's not a right thing for the homeless people.
Meg, you mentioned affordable housing. I want to move on to affordable housing right now. The average price of a home in Anchorage is over $400,000. And you mentioned it's also a vacancy rate. It's not a matter of buying a house. It's a matter of finding a house. What's the role for government on land issues and getting the cost of housing down so people can afford to find a home and buy a home?
Yeah, that's a really it's a very important question, and it's very timely. So I think we have to look at housing in 3 ways. First, land. So we need to expand the availability of housing. We just need more units. So we need to look in the Heritage Land Bank and the MOA holdings and see what's possible to possibly put into service. We should also look to our partners, whether that's the Mental Health Trust or other landholders within the municipality, and see what's developable. There is opportunity maybe even for land swaps. 2, it's price. So how do we bring down price? Well, one of the ways we can bring down price is to streamline the regulation around housing. So Title 21 and Title 23, so building and land use code requirements. And those were just recently streamlined in conjunction with the Home Builders Association. Also, doing a permit fee holiday again, I think would be a great catalyst, not only for building new homes, but also possibly applied to accessory dwelling units. And then finally, the vacancy rate is really around rentals. And so how do we get more multifamily units on the market? And I think that is the really tough one to crack because it doesn't pencil. So how can we make it pencil in Anchorage, Alaska? I think we have to think of other ways to bring on more units, whether it's a hotel conversion to think about housing a little bit differently, or it's ways to incentivize building over a certain number of units. And I think that is a role for government to play, because if we can't affordably house people, they're not going to come here to work, or they're not going to stay, and we can't grow our economy.
Yeah, same question, Kathy, on housing availability and the cost of housing here in Anchorage, and what the role of the Assembly and the government mayor is on this issue.
Yeah, I actually agree with everything that Meg just said. And again, I'm just going to say we have a different way of coming to those conclusions. I think the reason that we're in this problem is because if you talk to a land developer, if you talk to a home builder right now, they will tell you that the costs and the bureaucracy to get through to build anything is very discouraging. It's discouraging for business owners, and it adds to cost and time. And so it's not been an open door for businesses and developers to come in and build. I mean, we can just look at the difference between Anchorage and Wasilla. Wasilla is about 30% less to build a home. And so the prohibitive costs and the prohibitive permitting and regulations in Anchorage is killing this industry. So what I say is, why are we doing this now? We should have done this years ago. We should have never gotten so tight down on these businesses. We should have been open for business. And the way it works is we're open for business for Anchorage. We're just talking about housing. So let's just say builders and developers come in, they build more, they make more money, they pay more taxes. We get more taxes on the property tax rolls. It's actually a win-win, but we've been depressing the economy in Anchorage with all these high fees and permitting issues that we have.
I'll just briefly ask you both what you think about, it's not been covered as much, but for a long time there was the Cabata Bridge over to Kinnick Arm, which is a huge amount of land and housing potential. Briefly, what do you think about the bridge idea, if that's a role for the state or the federal government to build? I'll start with you, Meg.
I think it's a role for the state to start with, to see if it's part of the state's infrastructure that they are interested in and in maintaining. I would hate to see such a large piece of infrastructure built and then the municipal taxpayers given the bill. We have limited road infrastructure dollars already in our AMATS area, or our Metropolitan Planning Organization, where state roads intersect with the municipality. It is a fiscally constrained program, and taking on something so large would eviscerate the amount of money we have year over year.
Yeah, it would be difficult. It's a difficult project, and I know it's a project that people in Anchorage have been looking at. The government has been looking at for years, and continually stopped because of the cost and other issues that come up. It would be awesome to open up that land. You know, President Biden just helped pass this multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure bill, and we know Don Young fought to get a bunch of that money in Anchorage. If some of that money could go towards that bridge and we could make it economical for Anchorage and open up some land, that might be the answer. It's a big project.
Okay, we're going to move on to the first candidate question. So I'll start with you. Kathy, you can ask Meg a question, and then Meg, you can respond, and we'll switch, and then Meg can ask Kathy a question. So I'll start with you,
Okay.
Kathy.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Meg, what I wanted to ask you is, I'm wondering, in the last 3 years, as you've been working at the Assembly, what is something that you have felt like you haven't been able to really accomplish that you've been stifled in doing? Is there something that you had hoped to get done by this time?
That's a huge question, but it's one I appreciate. I think every Assembly member feels like the 3 years goes by in the blink of an eye. And I think that's true. I think that was more so for me in this term because COVID hit. And so I got the opportunity to serve for just under a year before everything turned to a disaster response. I think I have work that's definitely unfinished. I think the development of the mobile crisis team is a great strategy for Anchorage, but it's not fully developed yet. I would really like more opportunity to look at how that can defray calls for APD, how we can maybe save money in either being able to leverage Medicaid or even put out that service into the community like others have. It was really important to get it stood up and catalyze it, but I think there's still more work to do.
If you want a brief response, if you'd like.
Yeah, I know that this is a big job. It's a really big job. So I'm sure there's things, that you're still working on. And the emergency response team, I think, is a great piece of what's happening. And I agree. It's something that we need to continue to look into. It's obviously not the answer, and it's not everything that we need. It's a piece. And so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Meg, your first question to Kathy.
Yeah. Kathy, you've said that you really want to listen and look citizens in the eye and that you value what they have to say. But I haven't seen you at any community council meetings, even your own. So how do you plan to hear from Midtown residents about what's important to them?
Yeah, well, that also is a very good question. And, I have been, as a resident of Anchorage my whole life, I've been very involved in many community things. And I will say I had gone to my local community council a couple times, and it was important, and I had lots of conflicts. And so even just the other night, we had a community council meeting and I wasn't able to go because of a conflict because of the campaign. But I am learning a lot as I do this campaign. And one of those things I'm learning is that those local community councils are really important. And the ones that aren't as strong really do need to be strengthened. And so to encourage my friends and neighbors to jump onto these community councils, I think is a great way to get involved in Anchorage and important. And so I look forward to building those relationships more.
Meg, if you want to give a brief response.
Sure. I mean, community council isn't optional. It is the heart and soul of representing Midtown. There are 9 community councils a month. Just this past month, we at the Taku Campbell Community Council, I was able to hear about Old Seward having issues. About issues on the road, Old Seward, the ruts, and they're causing accidents. So I was able to follow up immediately, and now it's on the 2023 resurfacing list. Similarly, snow plowing in Airport Heights has been a significant issue where they had an ambulance delay. So working with, hearing from them, and then working with the Department of Public Works, really to evaluate how we can do and address those kind of challenging situations, that's the key piece to this work. So I can't underscore enough how important community council is.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to move on to a new topic. I want to talk about the relationship with the assembly and itself and the mayor. I'll start with you, Kathy. If you were to win, even if all the conservative candidates were to win, it's still going to be a progressive assembly. How do you see working with the other assembly members and also the mayor when there's been, obviously in the last 8 months, pretty contentious relationship with the assembly meetings and also between the mayor and the assembly?
Mm-hmm. Well, it has been contentious between the mayor and the assembly. It's been difficult to be in those meetings and watch how they've been conducted. I happen to know Mayor Bronson a little bit, and I know it's been difficult and frustrating for him. At least that's what he's expressed to me. I think one of the qualities that I will bring to the assembly is I am really good at working with people across the board. I do care about people and I care about their ideas. I think everybody on that assembly is wanting what's best for Anchorage. And at the same time, I think, again, as I've said before, we have a different way of going about it. And so to listen to people's ideas and to care about what they care about is important. But I think that we've seen the way this assembly has been putting forth policies have not been positive for Anchorage. Anchorage has not been going in the right direction. So changing those things, working to change those things is going to be what I tackle when I get there.
Yeah, same question, Meg. The assembly relationship and then with the mayor as well. You've been there for the last 3 years, so what do you think? How it is now and where it could be, be going forward.
So I think if you ask any mayor, the assembly is always a bit of a thorn in their side. I heard that from the 2 mayors that I had the opportunity to work with. I would say a lot more is going right than meets the headlines in the paper. We're aligned on the port. I get the opportunity to work closely with the mayor and the mayor's office on the Port of Alaska as the vice chair of the Enterprise Utilities Oversight Commission. And I have the same robust timeline that the mayor does. On homelessness, while you think that we may be at odds, we're not. We are working diligently together. It just takes time to turn these programs on.
Well, I just feel like not a lot has changed since the mayor came in with a big idea, and it seems there was the the steering committee or the facilitator, and it just seems to have not much has been changed, is what I was referring to before.
Well, I think it takes time to put those pieces together. The facilitation group is meeting for a couple of hours every other week or every week. So it's moving the pieces forward, either through locating properties, getting operators, doing all of the work. The legislative program, I think, is another place where there's been a lot of alignment. Overall, there's more alignment, I think, than there is disalignment. And in the day-to-day work, the work that matters, when I email about a constituent's issue, we work together. Hands down. It's not, well, I'm not going to assist you because you're an assembly member, or I'm not going to bring that to you because it's the administration. Very little has changed in terms of working together over my 3 years.
Okay, you mentioned the port. I want to talk a little bit about downtown. I'll start with you, Kathy. I moved here in 2004, and it seems like we always hear everybody talk about revitalizing downtown, and it really hasn't changed a lot. What do you think about downtown? What are some ideas you have, and does downtown need to need to change?
Yeah. Well, I think downtown has changed a lot, actually. Downtown was the place to go. We, went to the Pack. We did a lot of dining out downtown, walking out on the coastal trail. And those things really are not coming back. I know COVID was a big part of that, the way things were shut down. But the homeless issue and the crime issue in Anchorage, basically our entire quality of life has declined a lot in the last several years. And so that's affected businesses, that's affected families. So my solution to that is, again, let's promote business downtown. Let's promote business in Anchorage. Let's make this town a city that's open for innovative ideas. And it hasn't been that way for a while. We've seen businesses move out, and it's been difficult for our economy. So that's how I think we work with downtown.
Yeah, same question, Meg. Downtown, we've heard about the Fourth Avenue Theater. I was going to mention has become was a symbol of not a lot's been changing. What do you think about downtown, and what's the way to revitalize it?
So as a representative for Midtown, I say anything we can do in downtown, we can also do in Midtown. And I think that's really important that often downtown is thought of as the proving ground for ideas, but I sometimes think that's a bit limiting. Always got to get the plug in for Midtown. But downtown district plan is up before the assembly right now. It's really working to, again, recatalyze some of those efforts that were put on hold during COVID. One of the big issues for downtown is working to increase residential units. We've approved a ground lease for one market rate complex downtown. It's been really good to see Cook Inlet Housing also down doing some development. And we recently approved the ground lease for the revitalization of the old People Mover bus stop. So things are moving. Things just don't always move quickly, and things don't always move quickly during a pandemic. In terms of businesses being shut down, I think the assembly was very responsive in having to balance the need to support the mayor at the time in taking what he thought were the right actions for public health and safety with tourism relief, small business relief, and others. And I think we're starting to see that bounce back. I was just down there a couple of weeks ago on the weekend, and it was so great to see people again on the streets really embracing the fact that the light is coming back, the life is coming back downtown. So I think that coupled with a robust tourist season last year, and even probably a more robust tourist season this year, will really get downtown back on the right track.
Okay, we're going to go to the second candidate question. So this time we'll start with you, Meg. Question to Kathy.
Yeah. So you've campaigned on wanting to cut the municipal budget, but even Mayor Bronson's proposed budget taxed almost entirely to the tax cap. It used all but $149,000, which would really only save taxpayers about a penny. Considering 75% of our local taxes are spent on police, fire, maintaining our roads and snow plowing and schools, where do you propose we would cut from?
Yeah, that is a great question, because obviously this is one of the biggest issues affecting Anchorage right now. So again, we go back to philosophy. I think that, our budgets are bloated. Of course, we're not going to cut emergency services and those kinds of things, but we can make things more efficient. And 75%, that leaves us 25% of other things to cut. One of the things that this budget is bloated with, our budget, the Anchorage budget has grown by 20% in the last several years, and our residency has gone down significantly. We have a larger budget in Anchorage than most cities of our size. So the tax burden on the citizens is way too high. It's just too high, and it's affecting everybody. So we change our priorities. My priorities are different than this assembly's priorities. I'm not as interested in a lot of the social engineering programs. I think that we take a look at all of the areas, and we find, if I was running a business and I had this much income, that's the kind of outgo that I would have. And the answer is not to squeeze the taxpayer for more money and look for more grants from federal funds. That's still taxpayer money. That still comes out of my pocket. The answer is to be responsible and responsive to our community.
Okay, then Meg, if you want a brief response.
Yeah, thank you. So I really didn't get an answer to my question because I didn't get specific areas in the budget that would be cut. Cutting programs that are social in nature, those primarily come out of the alcohol tax and aren't going to affect property tax. Also, to the extent that the budget grows, I think we have to keep in mind the revenue sources involved in the budget. Bed tax is a huge portion of our revenue sources. Also, we have the offset to property taxes with marijuana tax. So I think the budget is much more complex than folks often realize.
Okay, and then Kathy, if you want to ask Meg your final question.
Yeah. Meg, I am wondering, how do you respond to the business owners in our district who have lost their family businesses and are struggling to take care of their families?
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate when businesses have to close. I lost a small business during the pandemic. It was just not feasible to keep it open, especially since it was one where people gathered. And I think there are a number of ways that we can continue to support small businesses. One is we need to provide breaks for them right now. The business personal property tax I was able to bring forward an abatement with John Weddleton and Crystal Kennedy to give some relief. And then we also need robust childcare. Without childcare, people can't go to work. It is unfortunate that businesses were lost during COVID, but I think, again, it was a very difficult set of decisions. And I think the Assembly was very responsive in using federal relief dollars to try to make up for some of those losses. You can never make up for the loss when someone's lost a business. It has been a gut-wrenching 2 years. So all I can say to them is I am so sorry that had to happen, but we have a community we also need to take care of.
And Kathy, brief response.
Yeah, I don't think that is a very responsive answer for those families that lost businesses, sometimes generational businesses, and have not been able to bounce back. Also, I think when you say that the CARES Act money was used responsibly to help small business, I think that is absolutely untrue. The CARES Act money, as we know, was used in lots of different ways, and not all of that was to help businesses, and which is one of the reasons that we may not be getting that back, that money reimbursed, is because it wasn't used correctly. So the small businesses in our district that have gone under, it's to move forward and say, this is the help we have. Well, the business is already gone. And they felt a lot of people in small business situations did feel like they were not listened to, and that this Assembly did not care. It was too bad and unfortunate. And then the Assembly is the one that decided who was an essential business and who was not an essential business. So there's pot shops and liquor stores that stayed open, and other things that were closed based on what the Assembly wanted.
I'd like to fact check that really quick. It wasn't the Assembly that decided what essential businesses were. It was the mayor's office.
So the mayor at the time, that the Assembly supported every one of his emergency orders. So it was the Assembly. I mean, if the mayor at this time said something like that, you would have come against him. You wouldn't have just said, okay, that's what we're going to do.
I'll let Meg respond to that.
No, I would disagree. I would take the facts as they are presented and evaluate what is being provided. The emergency orders, when they came out, went through legal, significant vetting. There was so much work done by the mayor's office, and we were briefed extensively before we came to the decisions on whether or not to vote up or down an emergency declaration. All of that work culminated into a very broad question before the Assembly.
So you did agree that some businesses were essential and some businesses weren't essential, and the ones that you guys deemed non-essential closed?
No, we did not have that power under the emergency orders, is what I am saying. The charter does not give the Assembly the ability to line item those types of declarations by the mayor. That is the separation of powers.
Did you ask the mayor not to do that then?
I discussed with the mayor many instances where businesses were not deemed essential, why that was the case when the business could appear to operate safely. I advocated for many Midtown businesses.
And were you able to help any of those businesses?
I think we could talk. Yeah. We could go back and forth on this topic, and I think we're very divided on the issue. But I do want to move on. We have a time constraint, so I want to talk about body cams. The voters approved through a bond body cameras. It's still being discussed. is it a role of the Assembly and the mayor to decide on the body cameras, and do you support them, or is it the role of the APD to decide on the body cams? And I'll start with you, Meg.
Yes, I think it's a mixed role. I think that the Assembly should help facilitate the public discussion, understand what the community wants out of and expects out of body cameras. The community is going to pay for the tax levy. I think right now there's a disconnect between those things. And one of the great powers you have as an Assembly member is the power of the question. You get to ask a lot of questions of the administration, whether that's the police department or the municipal attorney's office in this case. I would really like to keep asking those questions to fully understand the parameters of the law, of what Alaska does and doesn't allow with body cameras, so that then I can read the policy in that context and then have conversations with my constituents and take those responses back to APD.
So, Kathy, same question on the body cams. Do you support them, and is it a role of the Assembly and the mayor, or is it a role of the the APD to decide on the body cams?
Yeah. I think the biggest underlying issue, though, is how do we support the APD? How do we support our police in Anchorage and to facilitate them in the best way possible to help them to lower crime, to be available and lower crime. So yeah, I think that the APD probably knows what the equipment is that's the priorities for them. And if they feel like body cams are a protection for them and a protection for the public, and they choose that, I think that that's the way we should go.
Okay, one more question, then we'll do the closing statements. I know we're on a time constraint. What would each of you, I'll start with you, Meg, what would you say the top 3 issues facing Anchorage and the Assembly are right now?
Public safety, strengthening our economy, and public health. So on public safety, we need to continue to make strategic investments to ensure that the work done to rebuild the police department, since it was decimated by Mayor Sullivan, continues to bring crime rates down and gives APD the tools. We still have very few officers for a city of our size. Some of those strategic investments, though, can also be the mobile crisis team to defray calls. For a strong economy, we have absolutely got to support small businesses, and the number one way to do that is through childcare. If people cannot find childcare, they can't go to work. And we have a childcare crisis. Similarly, we need affordable housing. If people can't afford to live, then they can't afford to work. It seems that those 2 issues are really roadblocks to getting our economy up and moving in the way it can, and will limit our ability to take advantage of a workforce for infrastructure and those types of things. And then finally, public health. It's really the third leg to the public safety stool. You've got to make upstream investments in things like early childhood education, domestic violence and sexual assault prevention, while dealing with the immediate needs. Striking that balance is really important to a vital Anchorage.
And then same question, Kathy, the biggest 3 issues facing the city and the Assembly right now.
Top 3 issues: crime, the economy, and public safety. I totally agree. But here we go. Here we are several years later, and when you look at the matrix of how you would judge a city, how you would grade a city, in all 3 of those categories, Anchorage is failing. Our crime rate is up. We have continue to have one of the highest violent and property crime rates in the nation. Anybody can look that up. Our economy is very flat. Businesses are leaving. They can't trust our local government for the structures that they need to be in place. And so our economy is faltering. Public safety, we've had enough of this Assembly coming into our lives and telling us what to do, and then not dealing with the homeless problem in a way that is actually getting results. Public safety and the homeless issue is a huge part of it. And when every year we have more and more homeless people, more and more people suffering from mental illness and addiction in Anchorage, Alaska, out on the streets, we can see that what we have been doing is not working. We need to do something different. We need results.
Okay, again, I want to thank you both for coming here. This is District, get this right, 4, Midtown Anchorage, and we're going to conclude with closing statements. We'll start with you, Kathy, and then we'll go to Meg.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, it is really awesome to live in Anchorage and be a part of this community. I'm so grateful for all the people that care enough about this community, come out and make a difference. I'm grateful for programs like this where we get the information out and we can talk candidly and have civil discourse about things that we disagree on. I'm really grateful for that. I am excited about being a part of the change in Anchorage. I'm excited about going a different direction and really making the government a smaller part of residents' lives, and being able to rein in some of the out-of-control spending that we've had, as we talked about the crime and the economic development. All of those things are important for Anchorage. My family and business are here. I'm very invested here, and I want to see Anchorage succeed so that future generations will love to be here as much as we've loved being here.
Okay, thank you. Meg, closing statement?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Kathy, for being here. It's good. We don't often get a chance to chat with each other in the forums. We're often like far, far away from one another. So this is really good. So I think the most important thing voters should be considering right now is what is it going to take in these next 3 years to bring Anchorage to the place they want it to be. The last 2 years have been extremely tough. And I think that the experience of actually governing through those 2 years puts me in a position to understand where we've come from and where we're headed and what the tools are that are available to move forward. I would really like to set aside the narrative that this assembly and the mayor can't get along, because that's just simply not true. Of course, there's a natural tension. That is why it's the balance of power. But really, everyone who's working in government right now is working toward moving Anchorage forward. I think that it is really hard to get beyond statements that say, well, we just are going to cut the budget. The budget is complex. Government is complex in a way that a lot of people don't understand. And as a new assembly member, I ran up against it. And then I learned how to work within the system. And I think it's that experience and then the proven hard work and showing up that is what Midtown wants right now. And that's why I'm seeking re-election.
Okay, thanks so much, incumbent Meg Zaletel and challenger Kathy Henslee, for being here for the debate. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everybody for watching again. I want to thank our sponsors, the IBW Local 1547, Alaskans for Better Elections, and GCI. Stay tuned for more of our debates on the 5 upcoming assembly races. Again, the ballots go out March 15th and the election concludes on April 5th. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll be doing more of these here at the Alaska Landmine Studios in Anchorage, Alaska.